heck do you really mean by impact statement? So we deliver as a team. So how do you identify what you did versus what the team did? Well, if I wasn't there, this would not have happened. So maybe that's my impact.
Hello there. Welcome. This is My Next Big Move with Jonathan Essery and Tom Warson. Hit it.
I appreciate you wanting to talk about this. And for anyone starting to listen, Tom and I just started chatting about his sort of next big move within our company, Dialexa. And we're in the middle of a merger, joining IBM. So there's sort of that in the background. Tom's been a pretty strategic part, I would say, in managing our staffing as a consultancy firm that delivers technology of all types, hardware, software, strategy, design. It's now at a pivotal point where we've sort of talked about before, coming back to delivery and some of the questions that you're bringing up now. So I didn't want to chop your conversation and then restart it, but now we can restart it, I guess. What you were about to get into, kind of like what you've been considering. And
well, I can summarize this, that I joined the core business side of Dialexa, basically going internal to work on staffing during our bench notice period, where Dialexa was right-sizing their costs and revenue, and basically pushing to try to get people on engagements, off the bench, increase revenue, and reduce our overhead costs of people sitting on the bench being idle, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Unfortunately, at the time, I was one of those people who was on the bench, but there was an opportunity to deliver value internally, and I'm grateful that Dialexa made that investment in me, and I was able to deliver back, right? So that's how I ended up being not billable, being on the internal side of things. What's really cool, I know, Jonathan, you and I have talked about this before, about like kind of connecting things you've done in previous positions, layering them on top of what you're doing now, and sort of that, like, applying something in a different way. And so staffing has been that, my background being in project management, project controls. This is essentially project management. I'm assigning resources to tasks with a start date and a budget. I have to put a manager in at a manager level, or, a senior associate at a senior associate level. So it's gotten to apply those skills in a way that wasn't, it's not like building a pipeline or a building or construction or anything. It's a different sort of way of applying the same kind of concepts.
Yeah.
Ahead of the IBM acquisition has been an interesting challenge, primarily because we'll be moving over to IBM systems.
Yeah. Have you been through an acquisition before?
Yeah, I not with a company of this size, but yeah, I've been through changes in sponsors / investors, mergers, that sort of thing. So
I've only come in after a merger.
Yeah.
And so you sort of like, there's some management of like the clientele and expectations and things like that. I've never actually gone through an acquisition, so it's been interesting.
Yeah.
To say the least.
Well, and I've never done it as part of a services company, like a consulting sort of thing.
Yeah.
The previous job I was at, we were an acquisition target, but the group that we were looking to be acquired by, it fell through. And, and then unfortunately, due to that, costs were tight and they had to let me go because,
Yeah.
those
things happen. Sure.
Anyway, so what I was going to say is, it's interesting for me at this point because I've been out of delivery for a while, almost a year and a half at this point. And so, kind of like we were talking about, there's sort of this like, what have you done for me lately sort of thing where I don't think that there's a continuation of a staffing function at IBM in the role that I'm doing. IBM does have a workforce solutions sort of like group, but and truthfully, I don't know that I want to continue that. I've enjoyed this time. It's been great. I feel like I'm delivering value by helping my boss offload tasks and so that he can focus on more strategic and better things. But I don't want to become a staffing expert. I don't want to do this kind of stuff. This has been a good opportunity for me to flex my skills, learn more about how the company operates, how it connects its sales engine to its delivery engine, which I think is super important. But going forward, I'm still trying to figure out what going forward looks like. I'm at the mercy of how does IBM match me in my position to what digital product engineering at IBM looks like. How do I, as a senior associate cohort, make the leap into a manager, potentially senior manager, band 8, band 9 level person doing things that are more strategic, portfolio focused, and not the like lower level skills, which I'm glad that I've had the chance to have that like tactile, hands-on feeling of like, oh, this is what a product owner has to deal with on a daily basis. It's going to make me a better product manager, portfolio manager, that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Having the hands-on experience delivering digital products.
Yeah.
And organizing teams that way. Yeah.
Understanding like what writing good acceptance criteria looks like. Understanding the importance of a kickoff and a demo with your developers. That sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's kind of just like an open question mark around what that looks like. So right before we started recording, as I was catching up, what is cool about being in staffing is I get exposed to all the different types of projects that we do. And so I've kind of got a little bit of like a pick of if I'm interested in something, I know the people who are working those projects or those types of engagements. I have a much broader view of the landscape than I think some people have the opportunity to have, especially now that we've chosen IBM Consulting focuses on industries, those kinds of like stuff. And so kind of after you've chosen, like, I want to be in the financial services sort of vertical. Market. You're not going to get the opportunities to see healthcare type engagements or projects that might also be interesting to you.
It's not going to naturally come your direction.
And, and there's minuses to that. Like, it makes you more, attractive to new clients because it's like, look at how much experience I have in this industry. And they're like, yeah, this person knows the ins and outs. Like for me, it's like, I understand how the oil and gas life cycle works from the well to the pump, right? And the economics behind the little things, even to like the accounting principles that our company would apply in order to, because of the way that we were building it.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm super grateful that in my career, I've been on a FEMA construction project. I've been in the Middle East, like literally just scraping rust and repainting things. And I enjoy being a like well-rounded person, kind of like we were talking about at the beginning of those experiences I can take and apply in different areas. The way that we thought about how we capitalized the costs on a gas plant makes me think about, okay, how do software projects get like accounted for on the balance sheet, and what are the implications of those things? I like that kind of mix and match sort of thing. So becoming locked into a particular industry feels like I'm being put in a box.
Yeah, it feels strange. Yeah, I think I can echo that a little bit. So similarly, just replace oil and gas with architecture and design, and you know, it's also, I don't know if you feel this, but I will riff on what you're bringing up, and that is I like the versatility, and so to put me back into an industry feels a little strange, because that's why one of the reasons that I came to Dialexa was the versatility of work. And like my brain, I think, runs on doing different cutting edge, quote unquote, types of things and learning different things along that. And so I'm hopeful that even tied to an industry, some of those projects will come along. But at the same time, my concern on like this next big move for us going into IPM and being assigned to industries doesn't mean we can't do work. They have said that like outside of that industry, but it does mean that, you know, it's trying to find the right alignment with our skill set and capability, and that the deeper part of our V-shaped experience and expertise, that like I don't know if I want to go back to the big long projects that I pivoted away from. You know what I mean? It's like, sure, I could help coordinate a large construction project, and there are things to be learned there. At the same time, is it like top of my list to go back? Maybe not. You know, like figuring out literally what the next exciting learning part of what we want to capture and where we want to go it has been on my mind a lot too. Just in the, I've had similar sort of like goalposts of product strategists, for example, that you had mentioned, and how do you get there? And in a lot of ways, I do feel like it may not. I think it's similarly vague as being a product manager, right? Being a strategist, like you help other people formulate decision-making perspectives. Let's say we're going to define the value of what a strategist really provides. And then how do you do that? Do you do it from industry expertise? Do you do it from, I've done this 10,000 times in various different places? Just sit with me for 5 minutes and I'll tell you what to do. Like, or is it you have the skill set to acquire the knowledge, and you have the methods to get the right people in the room aligned, and then you know how to extract the value from them, right? Which is a lot of what I feel like is the harder value to sell, because it's not so obvious. And so for me, trying to experimenting with branding myself as a fusionist is me taking on that challenge of, if I have the versatility skills to get you the answers you want, but not the background, not the expertise, it's not so obvious, and I still get you the value and maybe even something you didn't realize that you needed in the midst of that, how do you get them to see that, you know?
This is a really interesting challenge for me, because you're talking about intangible.
Yes.
You're talking about intangible value, intangible assets, right?
Yeah.
And I think on a broad level, our world, our culture and economics and everything like that is not structured to know how to value intangible assets. And I would say that knowledge, conversations, relationships are all assets, but they're intangible. And you can make that argument, right? Like if you and I have a good working relationship and we communicate well, and we are both well prepared with knowledge that somebody else might not have.
Yeah.
We can build value better than someone else.
Or even like the easy to
Or
work
better-
with.
Or better
Attribute.
than I individually could do all on my own. Right.
Right.
And you can make that analogy of it's like a factory, right? Like a bigger factory that is well structured and, you know, all its parts and pieces are streamlined and effective is going to be more valuable of an asset than a factory that's spread out, not, you know, well organized,
Disjointed,
only does one thing instead of a couple of things,
or isn't aware of the other things coming across their way. Yeah. Yeah.
Ever since the Industrial Revolution, you know, the way that we prepare financial statements, the way that we calculate how much a stock should cost based on cash flows, all that kind of stuff, is rooted in a lot of tangible asset life cycle.
Oh, tracking. Yeah. It's
depreciation.
Like a lot.
Our tax structures, you know, the way that you can write off depreciation on your taxes, it basically encourages people to go build physical objects. We don't have the same incentives or structures, I should say, around intangible stuff. We kind of do, right? From a financial and accounting perspective, there are things like goodwill. There are these line items of how you can take into account intangible assets on your balance sheet.
Is that given a monetary value, goodwill? Or is it like part of the assumptions of this is likely to continue because of goodwill?
No, goodwill is like a special, I'm going to botch the definition, so I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, we are not economists, but we can find the definition.
Yeah. So, this is what the internet says, in summary. I'm sure any accountants listening to this will say, well, it depends.
Yeah, write into us. Let us know.
Yeah. So in accounting, goodwill is an intangible asset that is recorded when one company is purchased by another. So it's a special case, but
I see.
It's the portion of the purchase price that is higher than the sum of the net fair value of all the assets purchased in the acquisition. So things like it's intangible stuff like your brand name and your customer loyalty. It's basically the premium that you're willing to buy someone for that is over and above what their balance sheet might say. Here's the number of shares and our share price, which puts us at $200 million, and we're going to get acquired for $250 million because there's something intangible there beyond just the stock price.
Right. Sort of like the sum of its parts for a bicycle also includes delight, and I can ride a bicycle, but it's not the metal and the spokes and the rubber tires. I see.
Yeah. So, point is that like they've come up with ways of accounting for intangible assets. But a lot of it is more just like it's focused on things like, I'm reading Investopedia right now just to refresh my memory and jog my memory and stuff. But it's things like your brand, goodwill, intellectual property. So like patents and stuff like that. There's nothing in there around the value of the relationships between people or how knowledgeable and educated, I shouldn't say educated, but like how knowledgeable the people are. The V-shaped sort of piece to this is, are your people learning? Are they learning more? Are they learning from each other? There isn't a way on the balance sheet to call that out and say, here's the value of our knowledge and relationships, the intangible assets of the people and how they work together. Now, I've seen something where like someone has made an argument that says that makes sense because how can you put a price tag on a conversation, right? But
Yeah, depends.
The output of that is, or the outcome of that is, we work more efficiently. We're going to offer a better product. We're going to offer a better service. We can set the price point of what we charge people based on the value that we have together at a higher rate. So your intangible asset actually shows up as cash flow on your income statement rather than a physical object that you would put on your balance sheet, like a factory.
Okay, so in a lot of ways too, that's getting closer to what I think you're describing as like value-based pricing in a lot of ways. It's Chris Do talks about this a lot, certainly in some of his earlier like future lessons.
Yeah.
Where it's I might produce a logo for you and charge you $10,000 and draw it up on a napkin right after our conversation. And you might get frustrated that it only took me 5 minutes, but it took me 10 years to do that in 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And that sort of value conversation on its surface is not the way that we're typically wired to react. Like things that are hard should take time, and things that take time should cost money. And when you are an expert or you have the skill set or the talent to basically skip the time part and just get right to the value of what you're looking at, that's a conversation that's certainly the lesson I learned from him. And understanding that a little bit closer, and that's always like that's been kind of a key pillar that's been slowly building up in my understanding of, let's just say, value exchange, which is everything we do. Whether you're working or you have a business or you have a family, you're always sort of balancing ways, and getting to any next move is understanding, well, how do I get more than or receive either more premium things or more things in my favor than I extract that are extracted from me. And so that I think this whole realm is just fascinating, because I have no idea how people rise to the top, for example. Like I was out of curiosity, since we're like going to be matched to IBM, I was curious on like what are like you mentioned bands earlier, which is how IBM ranks their cohorts, manages salary, etc., and responsibilities, and how they staff their consultancy engagements. I was also curious on like, well, what are the top paid product management roles? I hear about them. What is the salary? Where are those? Like, tech is huge in a lot of different ways. And I was just using generative AI to search that, using it. And, it's like Netflix, product manager, $500,000 a year, which is wild.
Yeah.
But they also have like a business and a balance sheet to support someone overseeing a product that provides an experience, like, which is the value. If you were to oversimplify, it is an experience that they are selling. And so you need someone that understands how to orchestrate and coordinate, and also understand the audience in a way, which is a relationship, right?
Yeah.
And ways to communicate that to other people, which, how do you put a price tag on that? Or how do you even get to that position? How do you say, oh, I can do that without being in that role? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel you and I think getting back to where we are, because we are not at $500,000 salary.
And in some ways, thank goodness.
Yeah. There's a lot of demand for that role.
Yeah.
I find it interesting always to step back and break down, like, there's the surface of what you did, like staffing roles for certain skills at different cohorts. And then there's sort of like, if you were to sort of flip the matrix of that, where it's not you sort of used an analogy earlier where it's like, it's still delivery, it's just a different type of delivery, but it's also like problem solving, and helping to strategize. In some cases, having a method to go through and strategize who's available, who's the right fit for that role, right? And then without knowing that person, maybe how to gather the right pieces to make that informed decision and kind of go forth with what we have. So packaging that up in here's why I should be, like, we always have to do our promotion case, right?
Yeah.
Every time we do promotions. And that's something that I value here, that I hope it will kind of continue from what I've heard at IBM. They just do it differently. But I think it's so valuable to, like, I'm going to say, be forced to, like, know how to communicate the value and impact of what you've done. And there's so many different ways to do that. So, like, what have you started? All of that setup was to ask you, how have you started to understand what you've done in staffing for the last year and a half, and that role that on the surface doesn't directly equate to strategy, let's say, but in many ways you might be able to find threads that clearly articulate the skill set to do a job you haven't sat in the role of before. Because that, I feel like a lot of people want to go for something else that they've never done. In a lot of ways, the gatekeepers, to just throw a term out there, says you have to show us that you've already kind of done that before you get to the next level. So using your current position and example, like, how have you started to think of ways that indicate, if you want to go that direction, what already starts to indicate that you've done that and can continue to build on that skill set?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I think I've seen this position as being, like, sort of limited or capped, because so, we're going to be moving over to IBM systems and IBM staffing, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Which means that everything that we do today, there's no incentive to push for a lot of improvements. The spreadsheet that we use, the system that we have of how we estimate an engagement and then transfer it over to staffing, the mechanism, how it's all done, there's no great incentive to really push for improvements there, to build more value, right? Because in 6 months, it's going to go away. All that effort is going to be
relearn something
negated. So the value of my time, Rob's time, sales enablement's time is not going to be, it's better spent doing something besides improving our processes and our tools.
Right. I gotcha. Yeah.
So I struggle a little bit to say, well, where have I been able to show, those applied skills and making a promotion case sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But I appreciate you saying it in that way, because at the end of the day, that is how I need to look at it. Like, I can't look at it from the negative perspective of, well, I haven't had any opportunity to do that because the system inherently doesn't allow me to show changes or improvements. That's kind of BS, right?
It's a good cop out.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy.
It is true, but not always true.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's true, and there's also a different truth, right? Mm-hmm. So, it's something worth thinking about, and writing down, going back to some of my, performance retros with my manager, saying, like, okay, cool. How can we take this and reframe it in that way of saying, like, yes, I haven't been in delivery for a year and a half, but I've been delivering.
Exactly.
And I think that comes from ways of saying, like, I've been giving my boss more time to focus on other things.
Calling out what those things are, maybe.
Yeah. I've found staffing for X number of people, which equates to a certain amount of revenue, right? And if I hadn't been there, how many of those positions would we have missed?
You touched on something that I found interesting in this process, which is, identifying where generally mentored in our business cases or promotion cases rather to focus on impact statements. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, what the heck do you really mean by impact statement?
Yeah.
And so one of the ways in breaking that down for me was we deliver as a team. We do almost everything as a team. So how do you identify what you did versus what the team did, which is another attribute to the focus on what you have delivered and your impact. And so one of those things that you just touched on was like, well, if I wasn't there, this would not have happened. So maybe that's my impact. That's a sort of like shortcut rule of thumb way of identifying your individual contribution and your specific impact on what it is you've been doing.
Yeah.
So I really like that you said that.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Because I mean, it was just an off the cuff statement, right? But it is sort of important to make that mention of, well, okay, yeah, we staffed it that way, and or we estimated the project, to have this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like, yeah, but if I wasn't there, somebody else could have been there, sure. But, here's all the ways that like I made those impacts. And I think it tied back to some of the intangible stuff too of, look at the quality of my relationships with the people I work with. Look at the quality of my conversations. Was I able to help get decisions made? Build value essentially.
Yeah. And like, was it clear? Was it consistent? Was it quick? Those sorts of things that, speak to your flavor of doing things rather than just someone doing the job.
What's really exciting for me in all of this too is how I just think about consulting and, digital product stuff and just product in general. Because truth be told, I was a little bit disillusioned by consulting. I've kind of gone back and forth of like, well, it's such a great, like, you get to meet a bunch of different people and your projects are super interesting because they're never the same and that sort of stuff. But at the same time, it's like you're incentivized to give your client what they want, not what they need in a general sense, right?
Yeah, there are definitely those forces that you have to manage. And
yeah. The ugly, kind of consulting, which is, like, we'll tell you exactly what you need and you're just going to listen to us.
Yeah, good old boy.
Or the, well, just if they ask you to make this thing or write this report, you give them that report, even if you know that it's not what they need. You have to let them get to understanding what they need, even if you knew that's what it was all along, and you get to extract $1 million from them along the way. Like, I don't know, something about that whole, like, they're paying you $1 million to reach their own conclusion just feels like, I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that. At the same time, that's also part of like this term that we use in managing up. You could also say like managing outward, like they're asking us because they can't necessarily do it by other means, or whether that's people, money, time, whatever that they're trying to hit and go to market. And we're helping them do that at the same time, improving their processes and being able to speak up, speak truthfully, and have the integrity to be like, I know you want this, but from all that we have seen, this is actually a better way to do it. Would you be open to that? And sometimes you get the, no, just do it the way I said. Or a lot of times our clients do kind of come around and be like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Oh, I see what you mean now. Oh, wait, that actually really paid off, that sort of thing. But you got to like know how to speak up and have that. One of our core values is continuous improvement, and that's for ourselves, but also for our clients, right? It's just not easy. It's not easy to do. Yeah.
Well, and so let me see if I can connect everything that we've talked about, because in my headspace, the graph is all connected.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. So I think that there is intangible value in helping companies, organizations, teams continuously improve by focusing on the feedback cycles of saying, do you know where this information is coming from? What would make your abilities better? And then what are the products that help support that thing for you? For me, that's what I'm getting out of staffing and what I am excited to move into. I think there's some opportunities at IBM. I need to continue to explore it.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just expand on that very quickly in where my head is at. So everything that I've done has involved some sort of a cycle, a product cycle, a services cycle, it sort of thing, where we go to somebody, we say, this is what we can do for you. We go do that thing, and then somehow the lessons that we've learned from doing that thing should feed back into what we're offering. So I think about it from a construction perspective. If we're estimating how much and how long it's going to take to build something, then we go build it. We see what is actually happening out in the world, how long it takes to pour concrete, how many contractors are available, what prices they're charging, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we feed that back into what it's going to cost to build our next thing. Call it a lagging indicator or, whatever.
Sure.
I would say the same thing about us. How well or how effective are our engagements, and how is that being fed back into our estimation cycle? Hey, one designer was overloaded trying to support this product when we were building it. We need 2 designers on the next one.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you're able to find like a way to stitch that back in on a skill set or on a delivery or on an intangible way, I know we do a number of those things financially.
Yeah.
I do think there's always a benefit in stuff like that is just really hard to capture. Even if we do a project retro at the end of an engagement, sometimes it doesn't get all the way back into that upfront pipeline.
Right. And a lot of that comes to having a semantic framework. Meaning, do you have a language of how you talk about how you're delivering and how you're planning to deliver or estimating how you deliver? Are your sales team and your delivery teams using the same language? Meaning, do they talk about what they're selling in the same way that how we talk about how we're delivering? Let me give an example of what I mean by that. And again, I'm going to use a physical, like construction-based thing.
Sure.
It's a waterfall type thing, so, it doesn't necessarily, but when we would do construction, we'd have to do certain work breakdown structure of different things, right? We'd have engineering, we would have concrete, we would have, subcontracted labor, electrical, all of these sorts of things. And then our third-party inspection, whatever. We could break those down into fairly high-level categories so that even if we were tracking them on a very granular level while we were doing the actual delivery, when we got to the end, we could roll all that up and we could say, at a high level, these are the average costs or average whatevers of what it took to build this project. And then maybe we could normalize it by saying, like, okay, it's a pipeline, so your average cost per mile or something. Then you could feed that back to the sales team and say, okay, when you're going out and estimating and you're talking to a new client or a new customer and saying, yeah, we would love to build you a new pipeline in order to deliver your gas, but the fee that you're going to have to charge us is going to be based on how long our pipeline is and how much we know we're going to have to spend to build that pipeline. So in order to get our return on investment, we know what a good cost is to estimate for this at that high granularity level, not like super low granularity. So do we have the same thing from a digital product engineering sort of way, so that when we do our retros, we can have all these conversations and stuff like that. But then are we outputting, well, these are how many integrations we had to do, these are how many user stories we had to write. I'm not saying that that's the right semantic language, but are we talking about what it took to deliver in a way that we can communicate back to our sales team so that when they go talk to clients, they say, this is what it takes to deliver. Here's what you can expect in terms of cost.
Yeah.
Missing piece there is, how do you tie a cost to a return on investment so that when you're talking to your customers, you can say, here's the value that this is going to deliver based on what we know it's going to cost. So are we tracking value in the middle of that? Are we tracking, I don't know, return on invest or customer revenue? Are we tracking hours saved by a product improving, efficiency? Like that.
Like the sort of like product. Well, yeah, the product performance of the product, but more so of the business, like the impact to if it's an internal product that they've delivered or if it's a customer-facing product.
And I think that you have to, so this cycle that I'm talking about, you have to apply to your customers as well. Do you have a good feedback cycle of, hey, customer, have you gotten value out of this? Great. How do I feed that back in to make sure that I deliver value again to you next time?
Yeah, almost like a 3-month survey, 6-month survey. Like we have the NPS score, which is great. Like it's satisfaction metric. At the same time, like I am curious, and I don't know. Maybe growth does that, and I don't know. But I think that is an interesting fact of sort of the missing key of knowing the business value, because we have it based off of what I'm going to call the through narrative. What they tell us it does or has done or maybe hasn't done. And that's sort of a natural human way to deliver any kind of information, to just through speech or write it down or whatever. At the same time, it doesn't lend itself to improve a process very easily unless it's very explicit in certain ways. So to your point, is anyone like, we don't have an automated way to do that. So it's a person taking those in and knowing where to slot in and synthesize that information. And maybe that's where LLMs can really help. I don't know. We're experimenting a lot with different generative AI tools. Maybe that's an experiment, worth looking into. But it needs a framework, like to your point, like you need to have some kind of skeleton of how it might function to then go test it to see if it does the improvements that we need.
Yeah. And in, LLMs and that sort of stuff, everything is only as good as the data you're collecting, right? So having semantic language, but like if you're not talking to your customer about the value that they're getting out of the product or service that you're offering them, then how can you use information about the value that they're getting to improve their value if you don't know what the value is in the first place?
Yeah.
So to what we started talking about earlier of like how you can apply things to different things. And I think that this model of it's what's your cycle? What's the thing that you're doing that's feeding back into itself in order to offer something of value? The cycle is the value, right? What are the products that you're offering that are improving or making that cycle better and more valuable? And then what's the cycle is the intangible piece, right? So what are the tangible ways that are the intangible is being supported? I'm trying to summarize everything that I've been trying to think about. And so again, so for me in staffing, if I were to play this out, the staffing cycle is we sell a product or service, we deliver it, we measure how valuable that delivery was to our client, and then we feed back that into what can we continue to deliver and how can we make it more valuable.
And you combine it with the delivery metrics of how the team did, how much work was it more or less than what we predicted, and then you can adjust that, right?
And then for me, I'm sitting there saying, okay, now what products make that cycle better, faster, more valuable? Improving, using an LLM to analyze the skill set because I might miss something, right? And saying like, okay, I think I want to put this person in this role. I want to staff them there. but are there any other options? Oh, actually, if we move some people around in a way that like would have been way too manual for me to play around with, the algorithm has said like, no, I've done this calculation way faster than you could figure out. Move this person here, move this person here, move this person here. Your skills are now optimized. That would be an amazing product. Do we have an estimation tool that plugs right into, so that people aren't annually putting in something in a spreadsheet that is broken sometimes? Like, that's a product that we can, so as I'm thinking about digital product engineering, product-based consulting, I've heard the term at IBM, asset-based consulting. We're coming to a client saying, tell me about your cycle. Tell me about your value cycle. Tell me about where the value is being built. What are the products we can make or improve that make that cycle more valuable?
Yeah. Your next big move is figuring out where you fit within that, right? Either providing a framework to improve it. A lot of times it's optimization, but I feel like optimization is kind of just becoming a hype word these days. Yeah. Now it's so like, we should optimize everything. There's far more behind that, but I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I get excited when I can get into a room with a bunch of people, have them tell me what they do, and then pull all of that out, like we've said, synthesize together and give it back to them in a way that makes them go, oh yeah, that's exactly what we do. This isn't unfamiliar, but you've just presented it to me in a way that allows me to talk about its value. And now I can take the next step in saying, all right, how do I make an actual improvement here?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, people maybe are too close to it. They see all the granular things, and maybe they even know sort of how they connect, but by forcing them to step back and reconsider it and then put on a different set of glasses, like you're saying, they can start to see where improvements can be, or what the actual value is, or what new value can be.
Yeah. Well, and it's why I love the interrelationship diagram so much. That sort of web thing that we talked about.
The wild graphic.
You measure like the ins and the outs of all the different things, and then you can kind of rank them and say, these are actually your key inputs and these are your key outputs. If you want to make improvements, and focus on the inputs.
Yeah.
This is, I'll tell this quick story. At a previous company I was at, I was brought on to do project controls and build out their team, which is essentially like helping the project managers track their budgets, track their schedules, and make sure that we aren't spending money that we don't have or that we didn't commit to, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha.
I started investigating like, well, project managers, do you know how much money you've spent or committed to on a project? And they said, well, no. But I can't, because I can't get information from the accounts payable team about how many invoices I've approved. Okay, so I go over to the accounts payable team. What's going on here? Through this whole thing, I'm getting this big picture of, okay, there's a life cycle here of, we go hire a contractor, we commit them on a purchase order, they do the work, and then we pay them on an invoice. And everywhere along that chain, like you said, people are so close to it that all they see is, well, the project manager isn't approving invoices fast enough. Well, the invoices are all wrong and they don't match the purchase order. Well, the purchase order isn't being written clearly based on the work that we need to get done. Well, the work wasn't communicated what needed to get done early on, so we're just going by the receiver. Come to find out that the key to all of this was rewriting our chart of account on the accounting side of things. So I made this big push to rewrite our chart of account so that when we estimated our projects and then we wrote a purchase order, the line items on the purchase order matched exactly to the different accounts from accounting perspective, which would then match the invoices so that the project manager could say like, yes, they did that. Yes, they did that. Yes, they did that. I can approve this invoice.
Yeah.
And the accounting team or the accounts payable team can now say, my invoices are getting approved by the project manager really quickly. I can map them into our accounting system very quickly. Boom. My problems are solved. So it wasn't oh, I need to hammer on the project managers to approve their invoices more often or more quickly. It's that something else in the cycle of the value cycle of all of that stuff needed to be tweaked just a little bit, and then everything started working a little bit. Like I was so excited. I'm so proud of that work, and that's the kind of stuff that I love, because then everyone's happy. Like everyone's like, oh, my job is so easy now. Like, and I'm like, yes,
yeah.
You see, and that's just my joy.
And that's sort of like
approve the invoice, make it easy, go play with your kids. Like
exactly. Yeah, and that sort of systems thinking is what I think people really need, certainly from consultants, and like where you kind of fit in to recognize and get an outside view. I would say an educated outside view, because we have a different background, so we can see things, one, with fresh eyes, but also like with intelligence to look for the cycle, to even think about and have different methods of how to extract where things can be improved. And to your point, sort of like root cause analysis of, oh, let's go fix this one thing over here, so then the 10 things after it actually flow much more smoothly. And identifying what those things are, often, to your point, might be more intangible, or getting to a tangible fix is a series of intangible things to help correct.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah. And getting to a tangible fix means understanding the intangible.
And a series of intangible things, maybe, because it's usually like, oh, like you said, I have to go talk to this person, talk to that person.
Yeah.
And then there's things in there you didn't share that were probably a part of the process of understanding, oh, this is the kind of person in that role. So they like things this particular way. This other one is a little bit different. And so however we write them has to accommodate both different types of personalities and the roles, right? Because oftentimes we jump into teams or into businesses where there's, sometimes there's one problem person for one reason or another. Not everyone's really open to us coming in to fix things. They're kind of resistant to that. And so you kind of have to also coach and be like, I'm not here to fix anything. I'm here to help you all find a better solution and find a way forward.
Yeah. Well, and more often than not, too, you find out that somebody is doing something that they shouldn't have to be doing.
Yeah.
But because
that should be over here.
Yeah, because some kind of a vacuum or whatever was created at a different point in the cycle. Yeah. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, the invoice approver is doing what the sales guy should be doing, and the sales guy is doing what the, environmental guy should be doing, like whatever, right? And it's like, there's no one to point the finger at in saying, you're the problem here. It's, the cycle or the system needs a tweak.
He's readjusting.
Right. Right.
And I would also, I would also indicate from what I've seen, that's usually, I would say usually we like to point that out as some kind of dysfunction. But in the scenario you just laid out, it's often a situation of productive business operations, because you have to go forth and make decisions and do things and then be scrappy to pull it together and to pull it off. Yeah. And then you do that so many times, you get to a place where it's like, oh, I think I need a little bit more operational overhaul than I thought I needed, but you only see it through these small little quote unquote defects. And it's the, okay, cool, you got to that point. Now it's time to sort of evolve and become, I don't know Pokemon very well, but I know there's an evolution of each of the Pokemon. It's like you need to evolve up to the next size now.
Yeah.
So that, that's where I think I've seen that a lot. Whenever you do help out clients or deliver products, you also do that part as well. It helps them evolve to the next stage in their evolution. And that's always exciting to see.
It's always surprising and not surprising how many people don't actually understand what they do, or what they're a part of. I should say that.
Yeah.
They see what
A
they
larger
do,
mission or
but they
operation.
don't understand the whole cycle and how value gets delivered and what
Yeah.
their company does. And to that extent, I think a lot of companies fail to realize when the value cycle that they've built is no longer delivering value.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah. Blockbuster. Let's just call out a very popular one.
Yeah. Yeah. And right. So you can apply that to your customers, but you can also apply it internally too.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this is why are we continuing to use this process or this product or whatever when it's not giving us value anymore? I, where previous company I was at, we were like a $4 billion a year revenue company, and the CFO was still on the approval chain for projects over like $10,000 or something like that.
Oh, it's such a low bar.
Yeah, it's
Big
like,
revenue.
hey, CFO only really needs to be reading project proposals $1 million or more,
Or
right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
but they failed
Correctly.
to realize that the value cycle that they were using, where the CFO was just like, I have to be reviewing everything
Hands on
because I
everything.
don't trust that we're using our budgets effectively or whatever. It's like, that's not, that kind of oversight isn't delivering value anymore, dude. Like, based on the scales that we're talking about and the people that we have involved and everything like that, let's reevaluate if we can talk about this in a different way.
Yeah.
Let's bundle those projects into a portfolio. You can approve the entire portfolio and then say, as long as you don't do X number of projects or X value more than what I've approved, do whatever it takes. Have as many $10,000 projects as you want, sort of thing. So, yeah, but it's just that, again, that's when I think about like my next big move, it's, I get excited thinking about that. Like, how can I have the strategic conversations talking to people about their value cycles, identifying them, and finding out their next evolution. Right?
Yeah. 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 I think that's an interesting exercise for where you are. And if you were to maybe lay out what you just mentioned and propose a framework for that intangible feedback loop and see if you get it implemented even,
Yeah.
I'm sure Mo would love to hear that, frankly. Like, he's open to all kinds of those ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to pick it brain.
If you can catch them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they'd love that too. Well, cool, man. I'm kind of excited. Appreciate you sharing. I think as we get closer to our full acquisition into IBM, I think we'll have more of these conversations, just because there's so much to now reconsider. You're not applying to a new job, but at the same time, it's where do I best fit, and because I've been thinking about that too, and I think a lot of people during this process probably get swallowed up or just leave. It's like, I want to deal with it. The truth is, like, whether it's an acquisition, a new job, or new responsibilities, you have to understand your core value set. Like, we talk about V-shaped skills, but it's really a core value set and the foundations of what you bring to the table and what you are capable of doing. And that's the part you always have to convince people. I know I can do this. And it is so difficult if you don't know yourself. You don't know your core values. You don't know how to tell that story, which is a value story, in a convincing way. There's a lot of different levels or layers that I like to talk out with you, maybe in future episodes.
Yeah. And I'd like to connect that too, because I think that there is a tie to, I don't want to say like the self-help thing or whatever, but like there's a tie to psychology and all the things that we've talked about previously around like personality and dealing with trauma and coming out of that and saying like, hey, I'm a valuable person despite what's happened to me.
Yeah, from what I've been through.
This is all, it's all connected to, stuff like that. So, yeah.
I think that's bringing humanity back into, I'm going to say, American work life that has been skewed to strip away as much of our human aspects. And we're seeing a resurgence of that a little bit. And so I think that's a part of it, is bringing back the human aspect of, it may not have like brought in $1 million contract, but surviving that trauma taught me how to be more empathetic for other people in need. And you have a client who went through something similar that I can relate to, that none of you can, for example, right? Like knowing how to leverage what it is that you have that may not be on your scorecard, which is your resume, right?
Yeah. I'm just going to make a note here because I really like this conversation. We can talk about it next time. There's maybe it's irony or the conundrum of people having value and they don't need to be like fixed. Like people aren't the problem. Or the system is what needs a fix, and how we orient ourselves to that system is, like I have value whether this thing works or not.
Exactly.
It's just true. I like that, bringing the humanity back into the work that we do, because look at our political environment right now in America, and how quickly we are to like other some people when, you just say like, oh, like all of this conversation around illegal immigrants and everything, like coming into the US, and the fear that's around people worrying that like their jobs are going to get taken or crime is going to be increasing, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, okay, well, what if we stop talking about the people in that way and talked about what cycle is going on here,
Yeah. And there's a institute that over the last couple of years I was introduced to and was able to speak at their conference this year. And it's the SEAM Institute. And one of the things they talk about a lot is socioeconomic approach to management. And so they call this out, what you're talking about, as the TFW virus, which is the Taylorism, Faylism, and Weberism sort of approach to business back in the, I think, 70s or 80s, that sort of like established this dehumanizing, machine-like approach to business and capitalism. And so they have a series of ways, and maybe I'll share it with you. You can chew on it. They have an approach that they go through, but you can also sort of on demand a way of understanding what they're talking about when it comes to like humane work practices or management practices that I think fits this pretty well. So maybe we can talk about that next time.
And it was called what was the name of the institute?
SEAM, SEAM Institute.
Okay. I wonder if I actually heard of them. I feel like
You might have Sarah Skillman here at Dialexa. Sits on their board.
Oh, cool.
So
I have side comment. I have an app called Zotero that
interesting.
is for it's for like citations and bibliographies and stuff.
Okay.
Like all of these like journal articles and blog things that I've read and everything like that.
Nice.
Very easy to like catalog things. And so I'm like, I'm sure I've downloaded a research paper or something from the SEAM Institute somewhere.
Probably.
So I'll hop into my app and like just search for them and be like, oh yeah, look at that.
That's so cool. Yeah, man. Yeah, I'll send you a link. They have like a PDF breakdown of their approach. And so you can see it there too.
Well, dude, thanks for letting me talk today.
Of course.
I'd love to have the same conversation focused on you next time, starting with your work for the client that you have. And I know you've been working out there for a while, and as IBM is coming up and just talking about like how connecting what you're currently doing to what you're looking to deliver next.
Yes. Right? The future of what I hope to be doing. Maybe it's
I know we've talked about that like with your fusionist stuff and everything.
To a degree, yeah. But now the place that I'm at is like, okay, well, one, I have to maintain that. That's a struggle for me.
Yeah.
But also too, like, how does that tie back value wise? Like we were talking with you, like I'm doing that and that sort of research because I think it's important and at least having some kind of perspective. But then it's how does that relate to digital product engineering, or does it just relate to consulting?
Yeah.
So figuring that out. Yeah. I'd love to talk that through with you next time.
Cool.
We'll see. Well, cool, man. I appreciate it, Tom. All right, man.
Jonathan, thanks so much. Talk to you later.
Of course. See you, Tom.
Thank you for listening to My Next Big Move. I'm Jonathan Essery with Tom Morrison. We'll see you next time.